Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye is on her way back to Seoul, wrapping up a fruitful 8-day tour to the US and Mexico, focused mainly on security and economic cooperation. Exactly 1 week remains before polling stations open across Korea for the 2016 general election. Candidates from the major parties continue to stump across the nation. First big wins in Wisconsin for Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders blow the race for the White House wide open. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 6th of April. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye has wrapped up her 8-day trip to North America and is currently heading home. The South Korean leader opened the door to even greater bilateral trade with Mexico through a summit and sought greater cooperation from the global community on curbing North Korea's nuclear ambitions whilst in Washington. Our Song Ji-son, who travelled with the president, has a wrap-up of her trip.
In her first overseas trip of the year, President Park Geun-hye focused on security and the economy, two themes she has emphasized since the beginning of the year. Ahead of the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington, President Park sat down with the leaders of the United States, Japan and China to reaffirm their cooperation against provocations from North Korea.
저는 미일 두 정상과 함께 국제사회가 북한의 도발을 결코 좌시하지 않을 것이며 만약 북한이 또다시 도발을 감행한다면 북한은 더욱 강력한 제재와 고립에 직면할 수밖에 없을 것임을 다시 한번 경고합니다.
At the summit, she said North Korea's accumulation of weapons-grade nuclear material, which goes against all of its international commitments, is a direct challenge to the global community. Over in Mexico City, President Park shifted gears to business, laying a foundation for a resumption of long-stalled negotiations on a Korea-Mexico free trade agreement. This comes 8 years after talks came to an abrupt stop following opposition from Mexico's automobile and steel sectors.
멕시코는 우리의 중남미 지역 최대 교역국이지만 양국 간 교역 및 투자를 확대해 나갈 여지는 여전히 매우 크다고 봅니다. 이 실무 협의에서 양국이 윈윈할 수 있는 창의적 방안을 마련하는 등 좋은 결실을 거두기를 기대합니다.
A business forum and one-on-one consultations were held on the sidelines to allow Korean business leaders the opportunity to speak with local buyers. Korean startups fostered at Seoul's new innovation centers were among the companies that sealed deals worth $86 million at the event. President Park will arrive in Seoul on Wednesday, just a week before the general election, which could determine whether her policy initiatives will get a boost or face parliamentary challenges. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
Now it is another day and another 24 hours on the campaign trail for Korea's political parties as they have just 1 week left before polling stations swing open for the April 13th general election. Our Park Jong-hong with more.
With 1 week left until Election Day, the key figures from the political camps are hitting the campaign trail more rigorously than ever. Ruling Saenuri Party chief Kim Moo-sung is in Korea's southwestern Jeollabuk-do province, helping to drum up support for candidates in that region. In the afternoon, he will make his way to the western Chungcheongnam-do province. Kim Jong-in, interim leader of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, will be concentrating on garnering support from citizens in Seoul. Kim will be backing his parliamentary hopefuls, representing districts in the north of the capital. The co-chief of the recently formed minor opposition People's Party, An Cheol-soo, is scheduled to stump the southern part of the country in Gyeongsangnam-do province, which includes major cities like Ulsan and Busan. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
Now, with the clock ticking until Election Day, which, as we heard, is exactly 1 week from today, media outlets and polling companies are taking their final surveys before Thursday's deadline. Under rules set by Korea's National Election Commission, public opinion polls cannot be published or broadcast for 6 days before the election. News outlets are, however, allowed to cite opinion polls taken 7 days before Election Day, which is April 13th. That is the election day. Meanwhile, 2 days of early voting start on this Friday. Eligible voters unable to vote on Election Day can visit one of the 3,500 public polling stations set up nationwide to cast their ballots. North Korea could have already started reprocessing spent nuclear fuel to harvest weapons-grade plutonium needed to make nuclear bombs. That's according to the Institute for Science and International Security, a think tank that specializes in global nuclear issues. And this was citing an unnamed US government official. It said the process could give the North enough fissile material to produce up to 3 nuclear bombs, assuming that the 5-megawatt nuclear reactor in Yongbyon had already produced 5 to 7 kilograms of plutonium since 2013. The report comes a day after a similar report by 38 North, the US website focusing on North Korea issues, which also raise the possibility of Pyongyang reprocessing spent fuel. Japan is expected to make fresh territorial claims over South Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island. The Japanese daily Asahi Shimbun reports that Tokyo's foreign ministry will renew Japan's claims over Dokdo in its soon-to-be-released diplomatic blue book. The Daily says the report will describe Dokdo, known as Takashima in Japan, as Japan's territory based on history and under international law. The latest development comes a matter of days after Seoul lodged a protest over Japan's approval of school textbook revisions that make false claims over Dokdo. The Korean government maintains that Dokdo is Korea's inherent territory historically, geographically, and by international law. Corporate investment by Korea's top 30 business groups jumped in 2015. According to market research company CEO Score, the combined investment amount was over 76 trillion won last year, or roughly $66 billion, and that's up almost 18% from a year ago. The amount does not include spending on research and development. The investments were led mainly by the country's 3 biggest groups, namely Samsung, Hyundai Motor and SK. Their combined investment last year was nearly $43 billion, which accounts for over 65%, or roughly 2/3 of the total. The US Food and Drug Administration has cleared the way for sales of a biosimilar drug made by a Korean company for Johnson & Johnson's top-selling drug, Remicade. And this is only the second time the FDA has given the green light to a biotech drug for the US market. Kim Min-ji with the details.
Korean biopharmaceutical firm Celltrion's biosimilar drug Remsima is set to hit the US market. The US Food and Drug Administration gave the final approval on Wednesday to allow sales of the cheaper replica of Johnson & Johnson's top-selling drug Remicade. The anti-inflammatory drug is used to treat patients with a number of serious conditions, including Crohn's disease and rheumatoid arthritis. Biosimilars are biologic medical products with similar properties to ones that have already been approved. What's significant is that Remsima is the world's first Remicade biosimilar to gain a footing in the US, which makes up about half of the global replica market. It's expected that Celltrion will be able to garner annual sales of up to $1.7 billion in the US market. Remicade, which was first approved in 1998, posted sales of about $4.5 billion last year. Many in Korea are hoping this will pave the way for faster development of other biosimilars made by Korean firms. Currently, clinical testing is underway for 12 such products. Celltrion first got the thumbs up from the Korean Ministry of Food and Drug Safety in 2012 and the European Medicines Agency in 2013. It's currently being sold in some 70 countries worldwide. Pfizer will be in charge of marketing and sales of the product in the US under the name Inflectra, and sales are expected to start in the third quarter of this year. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has extended its lead in the DRAM sector by successfully mass-producing a 10-nanometer class DRAM chip. With this, the combined market share of Samsung Electronics and SK hynix reached an all-time high for 6 quarters up until the last 3 months of 2015. According to analysts, the 18-nanometer DRAM chip used in PCs and laptops will give Samsung an upper hand in price competitiveness compared to its rival. That's a 10-nanometer DRAM chip, rather. SK hynix and US-based firm Micron are still focused on 25-nanometer DRAM chips. SK hynix announced earlier this year that it would develop its own tiny DRAM chip by the latter half of this year and begin mass production early next year. Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders have pulled off upset victories in Wisconsin, where polls closed about 2 hours ago now. Both candidates dealt significant blows to their closest rivals, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, while picking up some much-needed momentum heading into the next round of contests. Oh Young reports.
All eyes are on Wisconsin over in the United States. The polls there closed at 9 p.m. Tuesday local time, but major networks started calling the races within an hour of that. CNN has called the race for Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who racked up nearly 50% of the vote, according to the network's exit poll projections. That left Donald Trump with 34%, followed by 14% for Ohio Governor John Kasich. For the Republicans, it's mainly a winner-take-all contest, with 42 delegates up for grabs, 24 district delegates and 18 at-large delegates who are given to the candidate who wins the most votes. Cruz's victory is a setback for frontrunner Donald Trump, narrowing his chance of securing the 1,237 delegates needed to win the nomination and avoid the brokered convention, which would be held if no candidate reaches the magic number. Over on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders extended his winning streak with a projected 55% of the vote, according to CNN's exit polling, leaving his opponent Hillary Clinton with an estimated 44%. That's good news for the Vermont senator, who trails Clinton in the delegate count by 230. Sanders will need to secure major wins and a majority of the delegates in the remaining primary contests to win the nomination. For both parties, today's primary was an important contest for the presidential hopefuls, delivering some crucial momentum to the victors ahead of another major primary in New York coming up later this month. Oh Young, Arirang News.
Now staying with international news, and the Panama Papers scandal has toppled its first world leader. Iceland's premier has been forced to step down for his wife's offshore company. Hwang Ho-jun has more.
The wave of fury towards the rich and powerful triggered by the publication of the Panama Papers has claimed its first high-profile casualty, the Prime Minister of Iceland. Sigmundur Gunnlaugsson made the walk of shame, resigning from office on Tuesday. The leaks from Panama-based law firm Mossack Fonseca revealed that Mr. Gunnlaugsson owned an offshore company with his wife, but didn't declare this when he ran for parliament. He has been accused of hiding millions of dollars worth of family assets to dodge paying tax. Gunnlaugsson says he sold his shares to his wife and continues to deny any wrongdoing. But in the end, public pressure forced his hand as an estimated 20,000 people held a mass protest outside the parliament building in Reykjavik this week. They said his failure to disclose the money could only be described as a conflict of interest. The change in leadership was sharp and swift.
At the meeting of the parliamentary party, the Prime Minister proposed that he would step aside as Prime Minister and proposed that I would take over his office.
The controversy over the Panama Papers is still reverberating around the world, as dozens of high-profile, rich and powerful figures are mentioned in the more than 11 million leaked financial and legal records. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Now, if you're watching us in Korea, you might want to clear your schedule today because it could be the last chance we have to enjoy the cherry blossoms here in Korea, as rain is expected across the country tonight and into tomorrow afternoon, in fact. The rain will start falling later today on Korea's southern Jeju Island and along the southern coast, with heavy rainfall over 100 millimeters expected overnight, along with lightning and gusty winds. Seoul and its surrounding area will see a light sprinkling of around 30 millimeters starting tonight The sky will start to clear up tomorrow afternoon and the mild spring weather will be back with us. Well, that's all we have for now on this Wednesday lunchtime here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for tuning in. Our next newscast is coming up at 3 p.m. Korea time with our very own Han Dan. That's our new news show, Newsbreak. So until then, goodbye.